would have never come up with that example on my own, but it is a thing you can do with Mage Hand.
I was manipulating an object.
You were. I'm surprised it was less than 10 pounds, but okay.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Mage Hand.
Ooh. It's a spectral floating hand. Iconic wizard ability from like at least third edition. This did exist in third edition, right? I think. Maybe not to the
Oh,
exact same degree.
absolutely.
I imagine.
I'm sure it comes before that, right?
Yeah, I would expect this kind of thing to go before that. This is a cantrip for bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, and artificers, so a lot of people get access to it. It's got a minute duration, cast time of an action, range of 30 feet. Not only with that minute duration, no concentration, so you can just like have this little thing up whenever you'd like. A spectral floating hand appears at a point you choose within range. The hand lasts for the duration or until you dismiss it as an action. The hand vanishes if it is ever more than any more than 30 feet away from you, or if you cast the spell again. You can use your action to control the hand. You can use the hand to manipulate an object, open an unlocked door or container, stow or retrieve an item from an open container, or pour the contents out of a vial. You can move the hand up to 30 feet each time you use it. The hand can attack, activate magic items, or carry more than 10 pounds. Handy. I love this thing.
All right, you have to use an action to dismiss it. Okay, I was thinking if it was no action, you could just tap somebody on the shoulder and make them disappear, but no.
Now, you will have to have it sit there for 6 awkward seconds before it vanishes. You can't do the like, oh, no one's over there trick with your, arm wraparound thing.
You can, if you have the telekinetic feat.
When it's invisible, yes. Yeah. This definitely is the kind of feature that has other features that work with it because people love it so much. So the two things that we should call out, telekinetic, like you just said. Telekinetic is a feat that anyone can take, and it will give you this if you don't already have it, and if you do already have it, it improves it, increases the range up to 60 or by 30 feet up to 60 feet instead. So you get
makes it invisible.
Yes, and then also it's invisible. The other thing that makes it invisible is Arcane Trickster. That's the other option that improves and gets Mage Hand. Arcane Trickster is the rogue subclass that's a third caster. It is my #1 recommendation if anyone wants to try rogue, they play that subclass because it gives you all the little tricksy things you'd expect a rogue to do. And I think Mage Hand Letterman and the Mage Hand expansions expands on it a lot, right? Like it lets you stow things on creatures. It's invisible. You can use it to like remote lockpick and stuff. It's a very cute little ability that does play really well just in tandem with the base Mage Hand utility stuff, which is like, the reason most people are taking it getting just regular normal Mage Hand. And when you do get that, I really think it's a substantial improvement on adventuring. Like, whenever I think of what is the best out-of-combat utility tool you can get, Mage Hand quickly climbs near the top of that list. Like, it's so inexpensive, and it's literally telepathy, right? Like, your ability to remotely move things with your mind. That is powerful. That's right. Yes, telepathy is communication. Telekinesis is moving things. Thank you. Hence the feat.
Yes. You know what? Like, I was thinking something I hadn't considered this before because why would you? But you think this makes what is it, the talisman warlock any better? No.
I don't. It's cute, but like you're using this to remotely give your talisman to other people. You're spending so many actions.
No, I'm talking about it as like a teleportation kind of thing.
Oh, so you give your talisman you like teleport someone over to you, take the talisman back with Mage Hand, and then they teleport over to you.
All right, because somebody else has to have it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that can work. It lets you teleport across gaps that way, but that's...
Yeah, but you could just throw it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, like, if you don't want to have to throw it, this would conceivably help you there. But that niche 13th level invocation aside, I do think... there are plenty of uses for a myriad of characters with this. This is the kind of ability that you can not necessarily like super build around outside of the telekinetic and Arcane Trickster, but it is the kind of ability that you can like, you have builds that want to play around with objects, that want to play around with thieves tools, that want to play around with breaking and entering kind of stuff. This thing's great. You can put it on the other side of a locked door and unlock that door. Easy step 1, 2, right? You can use this as a remote sort of trickstery thing. Someone, you cast this, it requires verbal somatic components, so people will hear you, but once it's up, it doesn't take anything other than your movement to like move it around. So once you have this thing up, you can really discreetly just like take things out of a register, move bottles around behind people, pick up something that's flammable, knock over a candle, right? Do all kinds of little cute, low tier remote exploration and sort of environment exploration stuff that I think has a lot of value. At minimum, this can attempt to open a door that could explode at a range of 30 feet. That's handy. A lot of parties are in the market for testing if traps explode things, and this is a remote at-will force that you can use to push and interact with all kinds of objects that are set to blow in Cobalt Wardens.
And you know what? If it's not invisible through telekinesis or telekinetic, then you can cast it outside of wherever you want to be. Keep it hidden under your cloak.
Yeah.
And then walk in and say, "Hey, shopkeeper, what's that over there? Can you get that off the shelf for me?" Meanwhile, your hand goes somewhere else.
Sure.
That's
that is a cute little use case. I mean, I think you'd be as lucky or as likely to like turn your back, whisper and perform the somatic components discreetly, and then put the hand where you'd want it that way too, right? You don't necessarily have to hide it under your cloak, but if you're really worried, if eyes are going to be on you, you do have some cool ways to set this up beforehand, use its minute duration to the best of your ability, sneak it in certain places. I really don't think the visibility of it is a particularly large deal. I do think a lot of tables play it incorrectly. I do think I've seen multiple instances of people assuming it's invisible, just like it is a telekinetic force. It's not. It is a hand that, unless you have those other features, it is going to be visible. But you can still do a lot of discrete things with it. You can still, especially when you're dealing with small numbers of things, or like 1 or 2 creatures or less, it is going to be almost exactly the same as far as discreetly moving and stealing things. Like, you're not going to have a lot of issues. If someone turns around and sees their wallet floating away from them, whether or not they see the hand carrying the wallet is kind of moot at that point, right? It's more so that their wallet's being stolen. And that's where I think Mage Hand has a lot more value, or has the value is the remote access to stuff.
Now, I know there's a lot of these spells, when you're talking about, putting something in somebody's pocket or taking something out, there's the worn or carried clause. I don't see that anything in here in the description, but nothing explicitly against it either.
So I think it's probably important to note this spell does specify what it is allowed to do, and the things are very clear. You use the action to manipulate an object, open an unlocked door, stow or retrieve an item from an open container. That open container is the caveat of how you retrieve stuff, or pour contents out of a vial. Technically, those are the only 4 things this is allowed to do. So in a full mechanical, if this were a video game, that is all this spell would do. Now, it is almost always, in rules as intended, that definitely made so that it can do similar tasks to that. But you can also
manipulate an object is, kind of open.
Yeah, there are specific rules for manipulating an object.
Are there?
Because of course there are. It's just it's buried deep within the rules, and I'm not going to drag that out right now. But yes, it is open to interpretation of like, what is manipulating an object quantify as? Normally that means, like I said earlier, knocking a candle over, or snuffing a candle is a thing that I would think this could do, right? It just needs to close on top of the flame. It's not exposed to air. You're good. The candle goes out. Again, I will also say that interpretation is going to vary DM to DM. There are going to be some DMs that go, that's not in the description. That's not manipulating an object. That's stuffing a flame. That's kind of different. And there are spells that do stuff flames. So I kind of get that reasoning and that argument. But I think 95% plus of the time, this is going to do what you expect it to. It's going to be most DMs rolling it roughly the same, which is that if it is a small intangible object that this thing can carry, it can just manipulate that as if it were your hand. This will be very similarly treated to if your physical hand was there manipulating the object, right?
Yeah. Not so much so you can't play an instrument or anything.
No. And that's why it's particularly cute. I love the extension into Arcane Trickster because it lets you stow an object, stow one object the hand is holding in a container worn or carried by another creature, or retrieve an object worn or carried by another creature. That sort of extension tells you some rules about this base one. Base Mage Hand isn't intended to pickpocket, but nor is it intended to plant evidence. But this Mage Hand's Letterman, the rogue, the character that's supposed to be the discreet, pickpocket kind of archetype, I like that their Mage Hand is expanded to fit what their hands normally could do otherwise. I think it's really flavorfully empowering. And
yeah,
while
so
that use isn't coming up all that much, let's be honest. It's still a neat little extra boon that the option gets that makes it kind of gives you more clear guidelines and boundaries as to what Mage Hand is in the realm of manipulating. What can this thing really do? Until you really just play around with it, I think it's going to be a lot of examples that we're giving that aren't going to be super helpful because there's going to be a very, very wide list of things this thing is able to do that are really useful.
I used it a couple weeks ago to jack off an ogre.
Yeah, exactly. And I would have never come up with that example on my own, but it is a thing you can do with Mage Hand.
I was manipulating an object.
You were. I'm surprised it was less than 10 pounds, but okay.
Well, I mean, I wasn't lifting him off the ground.
That's true. All right, sure, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Altogether, I don't think we're quite selling just how powerful this thing is. Mage Hand is really, really good.
It was powerful in that instance.
I'm sure it was.
You. Well, all right, give me some examples, because yeah, we probably shouldn't just leave it at that.
Okay. The most obvious one to me is the breaking out of jail sequence. So, like we've seen in, the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie where the Jack Sparrow is trying to get the dog to bring him the key. You ignore all that. You just go, yoink, that's mine, and we're out. If you're ever in a situation where there are remote objects that you need to access, such as, spooky books in a library, you're like, I don't want to enter this clearly trapped room. I'm going to send this in and grab the object we want, and we're going to leave. There will be real times where a DM will put something on a pedestal, Indiana Jones style, and you'll go, well, that room's definitely going to be rigged to explode or something. We're not going to find out what happens. Everyone stand outside. I will remotely grab it, and we'll see what happens. And that is going to circumnavigate a lot of the puzzle solving and trap finding and basic, D&Ding that can occur sometimes. To the point where I actually think the spell can be an issue for some DMs. There will be some DMs that go, oh my god, Mage Hand just solves all my low-tier puzzles. Because it's a telekinetic force, and that is really, really impactful at pushing buttons, at pulling levers, at picking things up that are small. Getting around Mage Hand, how you keep someone with Mage Hand in jail is difficult. And you're often going to find players really leaning on this thing to be like, oh, I can get that, I can interact with that, what's around me, and they're going to be very engaged with environments. They love playing with the spell, and the more you give them in the environments, the more powerful Mage Hand becomes.
All right, how about this? If two characters have Mage Hand, can you lift something 20 pounds?
No.
Because
each one happens in sequence. So rules is written, no. I would argue as a DM that's beyond stupid. Absolutely, those two things together can apply 10 pounds of force upward at the same time. That makes sense. But rules is written, no. Rules is written, everyone is stop motioning around in space all the time.
Well, all right. I mean, think of it this way. All right, my hand is going first. I'm applying that force, and I shall continue to do so. Next turn, I add to that force.
Maybe. I don't know. That's still fuzzy. Rules is written. Again, I would rule absolutely.
Yeah.
This comes back to say your mileage may vary with this kind of spell.
All right. Well, Mage Hand. It's using the force.
It is the best cantrip in the game, I think. I don't think it's particularly. Yeah, I'll stand by that. I don't think it's particularly close. I think this is without a doubt, could be kind of a first level spell effect, but is really, really cheap at a cantrip. This is a 5 out of 5 to me. This is one of the best spells in the game. Yeah,
5 out of 5, definitely. One more question. What do weapons typically weigh? Are they under 10 pounds?
They weigh. It's wildly ranging, but the smaller, lighter ones can be, is the answer to that question. If it's got the light property, it probably is 10 pounds or less, is what I would guess.
Okay, so that's handy too.
I mean, it can't ever make attacks, remember that, but
no, I'm not talking about that.
Retrieve weapons for you and stuff like that.
I'm chained to the wall, and my weapons are on a wall on the other side of the room.
That's another really obvious example that is super helpful, right?
Yeah.
It will encourage, there'll be a lot of DMs that are encouraged to hide your stuff, so you can't get it with Mage Hand if you're supposed to be in those kinds of situations, right? So, that's another thing to keep in mind. I'm looking at the weapon table right now. The only ones that don't qualify would be the pike, because that's an 18-pounder. And the heavy crossbow, which is an 18-pounder. Every other weapon in the game is 10 pounds or less. So you're good to go if on every weapon that is not the pike and heavy crossbow. Great axe is in the martial weapons. It is 7 pounds.
Wow.
Which seems light to me.
Yeah, it does.
I guess whenever you're weapons do have to be designed to not be cumbersome. So that makes sense.
Well, it's a great axe.
Yeah. And you're a great writer. So does that have influence on your...
I'm also heavier than I should be.
That's fair. Excellent point.
But thank you.
I mean, the maul is one where the maul really is just like a giant stick, and that thing weighs exactly 10 pounds, and it's heavy. Like that's got the heavy property. So, if you're a weapons expert in the comments,
I mean, all its strength comes from being heavy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and bluntness. I'm sure, again, someone nerd in the comment, let us know about weapon properties and why mauls do so much damage and if they shouldn't do that much damage. Or if mauls are more than just like the giant club that I'm envisioning, if they're like a real historical big hammer thing. I don't know.
Yeah. 10-pound hammer.
Should these weapons weigh more, commoners? Let us know as well.
Yes. All right. One more before we go.
Mhm.
You got a weapon in one hand, shield in the other hand. It's dark. Mage hand, carry your torch.
Yes, assuming you had an open hand for the somatic components, or you have Warcaster. Because you had because you need somatic components to cast Mage Hand. So
I know, but it's a minute long.
Yeah, so you'd have to stow a weapon, cast Mage Hand, pick up the torch, draw your weapon, move a minute worth of distance, stow your weapon, cast Mage Hand, pick up the torch, redraw your weapon, and move that way.
Yeah, you can pass it back and forth between other Mage Hand users.
Sure.
Whatever. All right. Mage Hand. It does a lot of things.
It does so many things.
Okay.
Literally an extra hand. That's so helpful.
Yeah, if you're ever lonely,
Carries ropes, or jacks more people off in Bob's exact examples.
Thinking yourself, but
yes,
you can pretend it's somebody else. Close your eyes.
Yeah, sure.
All right. I think that about covers it.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, that was Mage Hand. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know what you think of Mage Hand down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.